Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Had a little echo problem in the chat with Ralph Serna, so I have to re-record some of my questions with him. Today on the podcast, we're out on the west coast of the USA. In the early and mid-70s, U.S. high school runners had some amazing things going on. There were 3 high school runners out of Hammond, Indiana, all running under 9 minutes in the 2-mile. But out in California, there was a hub of excellent high school runners. We got one of them with us today, who ran internationally, won national championships, was a part of 2 teams that won world junior cross-country championships, set national records, and embarked on a career and stayed in the sport and shoe design for decades. We'll talk today with an icon of running in the 70s. Welcome today, Ralph Serna. This is part 2. Let's talk about one famous race finish. Division II NCAA cross-country championships, a famous 3-way tie. After that, they invited some of you to run Division I. It wasn't a team promotion. How did that work that the Division II runners were invited to run at D1 then?
Yes, my sophomore year, 1976, fall of 76, we won our second NCAA title. Because of that, I'm not sure how deep it went, but it was only individually. You could not send the top winning team. Otherwise, we would have had the entire team, obviously. But because we're tied for first, the 3 of us, we went. And we didn't do as well as we had hoped to, certainly. It was a whole new ball game. And it was something to learn from, certainly. I think we had run like 29:40, and we had a 3-way tie in Springfield, Missouri, when we tied for the 3 of us. And it was much faster than that. It was a sprint, and that I wasn't used to that, to basically go anaerobic like in the first mile of the race and try to somehow hang on. I think we're coming through then, maybe 4:15, like 4:15, 4:17. I wasn't used to that. I think I ended up fading to the 70s, but Eric was like maybe in the 50s, and then Steve was behind me. But I think we all still ran under 30 minutes, even in D1. It was more of that, just individuals going to D1. And the next year, of course, we qualify and we move up to D1 my junior year. Unfortunately, my junior year is when I got hurt. And then it was a roller coaster for the last 2 years of running. But to your point of the camaraderie with it, we had a small team. Coach Miller would make a rule that we would come out. And I can't remember what his time was, but he had us run in August just to qualify for our cross-country team. We had to run a 2.25 mile race on the track. And whatever that time was, I can say it was 10:40 or something for that time. And basically we'd have the time trial, and then that was the way you're going to make the team. Even on Eric's sophomore year, Eric got hurt the summer after his freshman year at UC Irvine. We didn't know it. None of us knew it. He apparently was having problems at the end of his freshman track season, which again, he hid it from everyone, knee injury. His sophomore year, we had that time trial. Now I'm a junior, and Eric didn't make the qualifying team. And none of us understood what happened because we didn't know he was hurt. At first, we didn't think it was even real. And so basically Coach Miller said, he's off the team. One of the greatest high school runners ever, his second year in college. He can't even make the squad, not the varsity team, just the squad. Everyone on the team said we'd all quit if he did not reinstate Eric. And credit to Coach Miller, he could have easily just said, that's just the rules. We were all going to come back, of course, but that was a weak attempt on our part, but we did say that. And he did let Eric come back, but within a month or 2, Eric himself just took himself off and just said it's not working. And he redshirted, and we thought that he would come back, and it was not to be. So his career ended very quickly. We just didn't realize how fleeting it was. a great freshman cross country. Track just is when he started to have his downfall. But to your point, certainly building a team like that is, to this day, we're still all friends and we still all talk to each other, certainly.
Let's talk about the World Junior Cross Country Championships that you participated in. Twice world team champions. They only score 4 for the teams, but teams can have up to 6 runners. Tell me about your experiences making those teams and your experiences in the races.
Qualifying for my cross country international meets and teams, as a senior in high school, I had only lost one meet in cross country high school. And according to Harrier magazine, I was the high school cross country runner in the nation. Tough to judge, but I had set the postal 2-mile record against Eric. We ran just by chance at UC Irvine in a postal 2-mile, no spikes, but we were wearing the waffles and it's close enough. I just remember I knew I was ready for that. And I'm going to say that was maybe mid-October, but I knew that I was ready to go under 9 minutes for the first time in cross country, legit 2-mile. And I just hung behind Eric. I was hoping we'd come by in 4:24. We come by like in maybe 4:28, 4:29. Eric's leading. And I just waited till 300 to go and I out sprinted him. And I couldn't believe it. I ran 59 my last lap and I beat him by 4 seconds. And I ran 8:56. I set the national postal meet. So that sets me up for the U.S. national junior team under 20 again. And that was in December up in Alameda on this big dirt field, call it that. It was 8,000 meters, 5 miles roughly, furthest I've ever run. And we have to go over barriers, steeplechase barriers, right? No water jump, of course, but it's steeplechase barriers. And I don't know how many, but it was too many. That's all I remember. And the last one was about 100 yards from the finish, which is important to know. The likes of Steve Lacey is there, Bill Donikowski is there, Sel Vega is there. Everyone from the country has come to Alameda. And of course, Bobby Thomas from Glendale, being coached by Mark Covert, is on fire his freshman year in college. He is on fire. And he's breaking all these records and course records at Mount Sac where legends have run. He's slaughtered the records. I had beaten him every single time in high school. All of a sudden, within 3 or 4 months, this guy is on fire. And it's like, where did this come from? And I got to be concerned. It's twice as long as I normally race. I have barriers. How am I going to do this? My coaches again just said, you got to stay with Bobby because he's the one to beat. You got to stay with him as long as you can. As you said, actually 6 qualify for the team, but only 4 score in the World Championships. So in this particular meet, we were already told that the governing body, AAU, could only afford to send 4 people, that the 5th and 6th runners could in fact go, but they would have to pay their own way. So it was even more of a reason to get in the top 4. And we had Roy Kissin now, who was coming up big time from the Bay Area, and just everyone else. What I remember is the race went out fast, and I'm just sticking with them, going over barriers. I have no steeple form at all, and I'm stepping every hurdle. I have to because I just have to. I'm with Bobby. We pull away from the rest, and maybe that means 20, 30 yards with Eric and Don Moses and Guy Arbogast. It's a who's who, right? The Gary brothers are all there. Steve Lacey, Sel Vega, Donikowski. Bobby and I pull away, and we come up to the last barrier, and I realize my tank is empty. I got 100 yards to go. I got a barrier in front of me, and I got Eric Holson, the likes of all those people just breathing down my throat. And somehow I got to get in the top 4. I made a conscious decision. I can either attempt to jump this barrier, hit it and fall, and my race is over, or I can straddle this thing and somehow just kind of parkour my way over this barrier. which I did. I'll send you this photo. It's Tom Wysocki's favorite photo of me is somehow basically crawling over a barrier in a national meet 100 yards from the finish. And I got to get in the top 4 with the guys breathing down my throat. That was my decision. I said I'd rather do that and try to make it and not fall. I, in fact, get over that. By that point, it was Roscoe. I'm not sure what his first name was. It maybe John Roscoe. He was a college freshman. He passes me. I'm now in 3rd place. Now we're 80 yards from the finish. Roy Kissin comes right behind me. I thought it was Eric, but it was Roy Kissin. Roy Kissin passes me. Now I'm in 4th place. And there's no way my family can afford to pay my way to the world championship. So I have to stay in 4th place. I had to outlean Eric at the very finish. And we basically had the same time. And I stayed in 4th place. Eric was in 5th. And I made the team. And Eric decided not to go. And that's when Don Clary stepped in, who had finished behind us, but he was in line to go. So Don Clary went. And then we get to the World Championships. It's in March of 1975. A few months down the road, the World Championships are coming up. And we have to prepare for that. Only 4 score. We only have 4 in Rabat, Morocco. We're traveling with the senior team. Bill Rogers is there. Frank Shorter, of course. Babarak is there. It was a who's who. Gary Tuttle was there, and the senior team. Then we had the women's team and the girls team. All 4 teams traveled together. I remember the coaches told us, you guys have a great chance of winning. We all knew Bobby was the cream of our team and that he had the best chance. So I don't really remember a lot of the race, but just by chance, the AAU had told us that if any family members wanted to go, they could pay their own way. They would be put up all the same places, the hotels that we were going and all that. My grandmother chose to go. My grandmother is a world traveler. She would save up her money, and every 2 years she would go somewhere. This happened to be her 2 years. So she went along with us. And one of my bragging rights was she was following the team, hanging out with us and got to know people. So years and years later, she would ask occasionally, how's Bill and Frank? And to my friends, runners, I'd say, you don't understand. My grandmother's asking about Bill Rogers and Frank Shorter, her friends. How are Bill and Frank? And I just thought that was the greatest thing. She filmed the race as much as she could. I think I have all of 30 or 45 seconds of this race on the Hippodrome in Rabat, Morocco. And it shows Bobby winning and shows the 4 of us marching in. It was Bobby, myself, Roy Kissin, and Don Clary. And we end up winning the World Championships. And I think that was at least the 2nd year in a row, because Rich Kimball won it the year before with Centrowitz on the team. And I'm not sure who the other guys were, but they had won it as well. And then we're the 2nd junior team to win it. And then the next year, I make the team again. This time they sent all 6 of us. That, to me, was one of the greatest high school teams, almost high school. I was a freshman. But the junior team, certainly if we had Rudy Chappa's squad there, it would have been crazy. Eric ends up winning the race as Bobby had won it the year before. So now we have 3 consecutive years of a U.S. junior winning and the U.S. junior team winning. And the next year, of course, I was too old, but that's when Tom Hunt won it, and they won it as well. So we had an amazing stretch of junior boys just doing amazing things.
That kind of success didn't happen again, and it's not going to happen this year. What are your thoughts on that idea of that incredible success in that period and what's going on now with World Championship skill?
Yeah, it's always puzzled me, because obviously we've had such amazing guys running after us. And of course, the whole world just got faster. And I don't know when we all got left behind.
Here we had many individual champions, both at the junior and senior level, some magnificent races. Of course, Bill Rogers, Craig Burgeon. It was fantastic. Let's just talk a little bit about your shoes as a warm-up to, maybe we'll go into that more deeply in the next episode.
Sports Illustrated did an article on some of the brush spikes that I have in my collection because they're so rare.
Yeah.
This is a pair that's never been put on and even has this rubber tab that you would tear off when you started wearing it. So this thing has never even been worn. This is the one that was in Sports Illustrated 6 years ago. I think 2019 they did that. But anyways, we'll get to that.
Yeah, let's get back to racing. Let's talk about your most famous races, and you have great memories for times and experience. Let's talk about your high school career again and the famous races you had with Eric Holst.
Yeah, so my race against Eric Holst, whenever people might meet me somewhere that I don't know, and they'll say, hey, I know who you are. I remember seeing you race once. 90% of the time, I'll guess and say, you saw me in the 75 California State 2-mile. The answer is yes. That's what everyone knows me for. Probably the most famous high school race I ever ran was a race that I lost. And so most people know me about that. And I will say it was probably my greatest race in high school, even losing. California State meet 2-mile. Leading up to that, Eric and I had battled a few times. We had run some relays. The first meet of my senior year, his junior year, was the Glendale relays. It was right after I got back from the World Cross Country Championships. It was like within days, and the coaches said, we're going there, and you're basically going to be a workhorse. You're going to anchor like 3 or 4 relays. Distance medley, 4x1, 2-mile relay, whatever they need me to do, I'm going to do. So the newspapers started hyping it up. This is my senior year. Ralph and Eric are going to go head to head. Unfortunately, Eric didn't have the 3 guys behind him that I did. And again, our second guy was another guy who had run 418. We have another guy who's run, say, in the mid 420s. We were quite hyped and ready to go. So it never really happened. And ironically, I think Eric and I had really similar legs in those races, but unfortunately, he was probably at least 100 yards behind me to begin with. So there was no way we were going to go head to head. Beginning of my senior year, Arcadia shows up, the first big trial. Rumor is Eric had hurt his leg in a non-related running incident, which we had heard was he was water skiing or something happened, but it was not running that we understood. That was the urban legend already. He ends up, I believe, leading the mile, which I won in 4:07. We came by in maybe 2:03, and I wanted to come by faster, but Eric started to fade, and then that was the beginning. He didn't come back to run the 2-mile that he had won his sophomore year, the year before. So we knew something was a bit up, but he was going to recover and he would be ready at the end of the year. Sure enough, within a couple months, he was back, doing quite well. Now it's coming up to the meets leading directly before the state. Now we're in May, and we're in different divisions. He's in small schools, I'm in large schools. We have the league meets, and I double, and maybe I run 4:15, and then I come back and I run 9:15. I win both of those. I run against a guy named Colin McConnell, who the next year would run 8:55. So again, in my league, just that guy. The meet after that, I ran a little bit faster, and then I believe I doubled up and I ran 4:12, and I came back and ran 8:58. And I ran against Brian Huntsaker, who had won the Arcadia 2-mile and would become my college freshman roommate. And so I beat him. I run 8:58 after the 4:12. Now I'm going to race against Eric. And this is when all the divisions come together, and the first 5 qualify to go to the state in our section. And I run the mile. I got boxed in, didn't run a great tactical race. I got boxed in, but I did breakout and I did win the race, and I run 4:08.2 on a dirt track, and I break Terry Williams' meet record by 1/10 of a second. So I'm feeling pretty good. It's my second fastest time, but I'm feeling good. And the 2 mile comes up within an hour. And Eric ran a strong race and he ends up beating me by 5 seconds. He runs 8:50. I come back and I get my PR though, and I run 8:55. So I have a 4:08 and an 8:55 within an hour. And I'm ready to go at the state meet, which was at Balboa Stadium, where Jim Ryan beat Peter Snell years earlier. And I believe Jerry Lindgren basically tied with Billy Mills on that same track. This was a terrible track. It was rubberized asphalt. It would be better to run on a freeway on a hot summer day. And it was a hot summer day for the state championships in high school. It was probably in the 90s, and it was just terrible. Of course, they went 3 in the afternoon. For some crazy reason, this time the 2 mile was before the mile. They would keep flip-flopping it back and forth my senior year. So the 2 miles first, we go off. It's hot as heck. My coaches just said, listen, you guys are going to go under 8:50. There is no question. You're both ready, and it's your first race of the meet. You don't have a mile before like you did before. So now you got to just go all out. And don't worry about the mile. Just go. You got to go. They basically just said, tuck in behind Eric and don't let him get any further ahead of you than possible. That's what I did. By the first mile, we had run maybe a 4:22, somewhere in that range. So we're right on pace. We're doing well. Then Brian Hunsaker tried to get in, and I just got right behind Eric, even closer, almost clipping his heels so that no one could tuck in front of me. I don't want anyone between Eric and I. We had Mitch Kingery was there, Richard Gary was there, Roy Kissin was there. It was just like everyone was there. One by one, they just started peeling off. Brian Hunsaker went away. Then Mitch Kingery was there. Then Roy Kissin was the last one to be with us. Then we ended up pulling away with him. So now we come up to the bell lap. And the week before, I had pulled away from Eric in the mile with 300 yards to go. I just sprinted away from him. I had done the same thing in cross country when I set the national 8:56 2-mile postal meet. I ran away from him with 300. So that was what our plan was, to try to do it again. Unfortunately, I didn't realize I was running 10 seconds faster than I ever had in a 2-mile. So that little sprint may not be there. And as it turns out, I tried to pass Eric 3 times in the last 400. The bell lap, I tried to get around him. He held me off. We come on the back stretch. I tried to get past him before the last turn. He holds me off. We come off the final turn. I try one last time. Tank is empty. He ends up beating me by exactly 1 second. We finished the race, and not many people really knew, but Eric comes up to me directly after, and I'm just thinking, I know I ran fast, and I'm just spent. The weather was hot. The track is terrible. The race was great, but I just got second place. I'll never be a state champion in high school, but I know I ran a great time. Eric comes up to me and congratulates me, fair enough. And he says, congratulations, you just broke my record. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you're the fastest losing 2-mile of all time now. And coming from anyone else, I would have been really upset. But to me, Eric really had a pure passion for our sport, and he meant nothing bad about that. He was truly, in his mind, congratulating me for doing something great. Coming from anyone else, you'd be really upset. I was, I'm sure, for a split second, but knowing that it came from Eric, and he was a true student of our sport, and I ended up appreciating it even more and more as time went by. But yeah, so I was the fastest losing time for quite a long time until everyone else came around. But I hung my hat on that for a long time, and I was happy. As time went by, I was more and more pleased with that fact. At that time, think about this. Only 2 people had run faster than Eric and I in history in high school in the U.S.
Yes, a guy named Prefontaine and Craig Virgin.
Craig Virgin had the record still. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 4th fastest individual at the time.
That's great. You had long relationships with, of course, Eric Holst through high school, then at least a while in college. Let's talk about your relationships and the differences of some of these personalities. For example, Eric and also Alberto Salazar.
My relationship with some of the guys in that era, especially Eric and Alberto Salazar, two amazing athletes, of course, and two became really good friends at that time when we were traveling together. I was roommates with both of them on international teams. With Eric, when we ran against the Russians in Austin, Texas. And then I was roommates with Alberto twice when we ran the World Cross Country Championships the next year. And also in Russia, in Tallinn, Russia, now Estonia. We were roommates then again. Then we continued on that trip to Ludenstadt, West Germany, and we were roommates then as well. Eric was unique because if I was to answer a question of who do you know that's never drank or smoked in their life, Eric would be the first. He was just pure that way. I know his only vice was that he loved ice cream, and he always would eat this ice cream. And he would just tell it like it is. So when we became teammates at UC Irvine, Eric and I later on, everyone got pranks pulled on him. And I think we go to running camps in the beginning of cross country, and just a bunch of guys with Coach Miller up in the mountains, just isolated. And, you know, how much can go wrong with a bunch of teenagers, young 20-year-olds with nothing to do and all this energy penned up? You'd pull pranks. I think one time we got a frog and we put a frog in Eric's bed, you know, and Eric, we tucked it in there, and then Eric gets in there and yells, and then the frog goes hopping away and on its merry way. And he was fine with that. So he could take it as much as he would give it as well. And he would always say, if we came up with something, maybe it was music, that everyone had their own choice, but we're listening to Rolling Stones or we're listening to Led Zeppelin or something. Eric didn't not want that. His favorite quote was, when you listen to that music, you take your brain out of your head and you put it on a shelf because you don't have a brain. You're not listening. So that kind of music, that was Eric. And he's a great guy. Alberto, this is one of my favorite stories about Alberto. We're in Chepstow to run the World Cross Country Championships. Alberto and I are roommates, and Roy Kissin and Tom Hunt are roommates. I don't remember what the name of the lodge that we're staying at, but I remember it was like a golf resort. You'd drive through, and it was like a big oval track. You'd drive through, at the very top is the lobby, and then you'd drive back out on the other side. Alberto and I had a room facing that little parking struck area, so we could see anyone walking back and forth. Alberto had a great idea. He said, hey, Roy Kissin is writing an article for Runner's World about this meet. Let's pull a prank on him. What Alberto came up with was, we're going to call up Roy and Tom's room, and we're going to say that one of us is a writer and that we want to interview him, and Roy's going to come down, and we're going to watch him walk across the court. We can watch this with our light turned off. So sure enough, we tell Roy in this really bad accent on the phone, oh, John Walker's going to be the official starter of the race, and we want to interview you, Roy, because you're doing an article. Why don't you come down to the lobby? So we're joking, thinking Roy's going to figure it out in a split second. We watch as Roy comes down with Tom, goes to the lobby, waits for a minute. Eventually, he starts walking back. And we're thinking, he didn't figure it out. I can't believe it. Alberto says, let's do it again. So we did the exact same thing. He walks across, nothing, of course, there's no one there. And then he walks back. We thought, okay, he's going to figure it out. So let's just not tell him. We didn't tell him. Lo and behold, we run the race, we win the team championship, so on and so forth. Runner's World ends up putting an article out, and Roy writes all about this guy who called him to the lobby that never showed up. And we couldn't believe that he actually did that. And now we're feeling terribly. It probably took us a couple decades before we approached Roy and said, Roy, this is the story. It was us. Thanks to Alberto. So Alberto was that kind of a guy. He liked to pull pranks and just do those kinds of things. And when we went to Russia for the track meet, we were in Tallinn, and it was certainly more the Cold War era then. It was on the bicentennial, 1976, July, we're in Tallinn, Russia. And I always tell my family and friends, I'll always remember where I was on the bicentennial. I was in Tallinn, Russia. How weird is that? Anyways, we get there, and unbeknownst to me, Alberto had said, oh, yeah, I read, because then there was no computers. He said, yeah, I heard and I read that 501 jeans, Levi's, are worth like a lot of money. You can get a lot of money. He's a high school senior. I'm a college freshman. So long story short is he had brought a couple extra pair of 501s, and we knew that literally, I'm sure we were being watched. We were somehow able to get out on our own, the two of us, meet some young people to let them know what we had. And I think Alberto sold each pair like for $90, which was phenomenal amount of money in 1976 to a high school senior. It was funny. And again, that's the kind of thing that he would do. And it was just funny. So both of them were great teammates, and for almost opposite reasons. But the one thing was they both had such high intensity. I can remember knowing what Eric did and racing against him for the last couple of years in high school and then in college, and watching Alberto and being able to be his teammate and watching him train when we're getting ready to go over to Russia or to go to even Austin, Texas, and watching them do all these workouts, and we'd watch each other. They both shared that identical trait, was that they're just so intense. And of course, seeing how far Alberto would push his body later years when he ran like Falmouth and the Boston Marathon, when he almost killed himself just running. They're both that same person. Their drive was just the highest I've ever seen. There's a lot of stories I have that basically lead from my running career to my design career, and how these really weird tangents came across, or the Runners Reunited, which truly, I believe that'll be my legacy. I've reunited people. Yeah, in a nutshell. Nelson Ferris is showing up. Jan Lester from ASICS is showing up. Vans, who I was designing shoes for, have shown up. And Saucony has shown up with Terry Drake. It's just, I've lived like 5 different lives, and each one intense. And somehow there's been a thread that just tangentially connected all those things. But yeah, we'll get more into that.
You're a collector of memorabilia and history. How well did you know Mike Finelli?
Mike Finelli. I never regularly competed against him, but because of my collection, which is dwarfed by his collection, I think he said one time, which I found it to be a complete pride on my part. He said, Ralph has more stuff and knows more stuff about high school track than I do, but he knows about the overall world of running, right? And I know that Penn Relays was one of his big things. And in a quick nutshell, this was a really rare mug that is from 1905, Penn Relays. I just pulled it out, and because it was something that Mike and I would speak about. And basically, he couldn't believe, that I had this. I know he and his brother, I always talk to Gary all the time, right? So we're still friends. But I got this from Don Franken. Don Franken found it somewhere in his storage, said, Ralph, I know you collect track and field memorabilia. Here you go, 1905, Penn Relays. And Mike couldn't believe it. And Mike came to Runners Reunited about a year and a half, 2 years before he passed. One quick thing. I knew that he was from back east, then he was from the Bay Area. But he was actually what was named a tech rep for Reebok, which meant you were a salesman assistant to do, and Nike calls them the Eakins, Nike spelled backwards. And he did that whole thing, but he would come to my running shop, which is the very first running shop in Orange County called Loshorns for Runners, now called Snail Space. And I worked there. I managed them. Even after I left, I was at Sub 4 and blah, blah. That's another story. But Mike was one of the first tech reps that came to me and said, you should get into the footwear industry, because I designed for Sub 4 apparel. And he said, no, you should design shoes. And he was one of the first ones to tell me that. And he said, you should take my job because I'm moving up. And then it took me a while. We'll get to that another time. But really quickly, last year when we did this whole thing, and he had come previous years, and I remember he brought some stuff and it was handing out some great things, and we raffled off some of his great stuff. He said, raffle these things off. And he brought a special magazine for Mark Belger, who showed up from San Diego. Just amazing things. But last year, after he passed, I forgot who it was, but someone got a hold of me and said, I'm one of Mike's friends. I want to donate a bunch of buttons of Mike. And just his face. She said, how many do you need? And I said, I make swag bags at 180 to 200 to make sure, because my thing is now at 165 people, right? Invitation only. You're always welcome, keep that in mind. And it's July 12th this year. But I said, that's what I do. And so every person that left with a swag bag with various things, and one of them was Mike Finelli's button.
Okay. Thanks, Ralph. We'll connect next week and continue this interview. Thanks.
Okay. Take care, Matthew.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.